Hey everyone, Andrew back again and welcome to another video. And as you can tell from the title, I'm here with my death metal collection videos. So I was just in the mood to go through my death metal collection with you guys. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about each of the bands or each of the albums because I don't want this video to be super long. So if you have any questions about any of the bands or albums that I'm about to show, just let me know in the comments section below. But if you are a death metal fan, I'm sure you'll be pretty familiar with most of the bands that I'm about to show you guys anyway. So with that being said, let's get started. So I'm going to start with a band that I don't really hear talked about too much here on YouTube, which is a shame because they are a fantastic modern death metal band, and that is Bloodbath. And this is their album Resurrection Through Carnage. Really good stuff. The next one from Bloodbath is Grand Morbid Funeral. Again, another really good album. Next up from Bloodbath we have the Fathomless Mastery. And next up, this is definitely my favourite Bloodbath album, Nightmares Made Flesh. So if you haven't heard of these guys, this is the album that I definitely recommend checking out first. Really good stuff. And this is their most recent album, which I like, but it's probably my least favourite out of everything they've done so far. And that is The Arrow of Satan Is Drawn. Not a bad album, but definitely their weakest that they've done so far in my opinion. But yeah, as I said, if you've never heard of Bloodbath before and you're looking for a modern death metal band to get into, I definitely recommend checking these guys out. The next band I am really lacking on. I do definitely intend to build up my Cannibal Corpse collection, but these guys need no introduction when it comes to death metal. So this is their album Gore Obsessed, which is one of my personal favourite albums from these guys. I don't like everything they've done, but I like a handful of their albums. So that's Cannibal Corpse, Gore Obsessed. The next one we have here is Cannibal Corpse Kill, and I'm really sorry about the glare. This is also another really good album. And their most recent one, Cannibal Corpse Red Before Black. This album is fantastic. So that is it. That is all I own in terms of Cannibal Corpse. So I definitely need to add more Cannibal Corpse into the collection. But yeah, as I said, these guys need no introduction. Very well known death metal band. Next up we have The Crown with Death Race King. I'm really new to these guys. I actually got this sent to me from a fellow YouTuber. So Simon, if you're watching this video, again, thanks a lot for this one. These guys are really good, so definitely recommend checking them out if you haven't already. That's The Crown. Next up is one of my favourite death metal bands of all time, and this is definitely the band that really got me into death metal, and these guys need no introduction. I'm sure you're all super familiar with these guys, and if not, what are you doing? Definitely check them out. And that of course is Death, and this is their album Scream Bloody Gore. All of their albums I own on the 2-disc Relapse Records editions, and I definitely highly recommend these releases. They're really nice. I'm not going to go through every album, but I'll just show you. They all come with these slip cases, which is really cool. Classic album right here. The next one I own is Leprosy, and I pretty much like everything these guys have put out. Their sound did change a little bit over time, but just absolutely classic stuff. So that's Death Leprosy. Next up we have Spiritual Healing. Really, really good stuff. Next up we have Human, which is another great album, and I love the artwork on this one. Next up is Individual Thought Patterns. Symbolic, which again, really, really awesome artwork on this one too. And the last one, Sound of Perseverance. So, as I said, I'm sure everyone is familiar with Death, such a classic death metal band, very, very well known. And if not, I definitely highly recommend checking them out, and I definitely highly recommend these Relapse Records releases. They're really, really nice. Okay, so that is the first shelf, so now I will go on to shelf number 2. Okay, so now we're on to shelf number 2. So first up I have Death Breath, Let It Stink, and as you can tell from the cover, this is a nice little nod or a rip-off to the Beatles cover. I'm not overly familiar with these guys other than this album, but I can recommend this album. It's really, really good. But yeah, as I said, other than this album, I don't really know much about Death Breath, so can't talk too much about them, but yeah, really, really good. Then I have a couple of Dismember albums. These guys are fairly well known in terms of death metal, and they're really, really awesome. So this is one of their albums, Like an Ever-Flowing Stream. As far as I know, this is pretty much one of their major albums. It's certainly the album that I first listened to when I was getting into these guys, so that's that one. And then I own a couple more Dismember albums, Where Iron Crosses Grow, more recent one, and this one is also really, really good. And then the last one I have here is Dismember, That God That Never Was. So that's that. Then moving on to another really, really classic death metal band, Entombed with Left Hand Path. Absolute classic album right here. So that is that one. And then we have Wolverine Blues, which gets mixed reviews or opinions, but I do quite like this album quite a lot. I did have Gladstone or Clandestine, or however you say it, but for some reason I can't find it, so I have no idea where that is. But Entombed, I'm sure you guys have all heard of them before, absolute classic band. Now we're moving on to something pretty extreme, and this band certainly won't be for everyone. They're kind of death metal, grindcore, really, really, really extreme. So if you've never heard of these guys before, and especially if you're only just getting into death metal, maybe wait a while till you check these guys out. But that's Exhumed, and this is their album All Guts No Glory. I like these guys, so that's that one. The next one we have here is Necrocracy. Awesome artwork on this one, and this is another really good album. Next up we have Exhumed Gore Metal, and I absolutely love the artwork on this one. Awesome release, this one. Really good. And their most recent one, Death Revenge, from a few years ago. And again, this is another really good album. So yeah, as I said, these guys are definitely not for everyone. They're definitely more on the extreme side of things. But if you like grindcore and something a little bit more extreme and brutal and full on, definitely check these guys out. Okay, moving on to one of my personal favourite modern death metal bands, and that is Gruesome with their album Savage Land. These guys are a death worship band, so if you're a fan of the death metal band Death and you've never heard of these guys, I definitely recommend checking them out. Really amazing modern death metal band, Gruesome. Then we have Dimensions of Horror, Gruesome. This is an EP, 6-track EP. Again, really awesome stuff. And their most recent album from a few years ago, Twisted Prayers, and this is what is playing in the background. So yeah, as I said, these are definitely one of my favourite modern death metal bands for sure. Just absolutely awesome stuff. That's Gruesome. Another really good modern death metal band is Jungle Rot. I don't really hear these guys talked about that often, but I definitely highly recommend them. And this is their album Kill on Command, which is really good. Jungle Rot, Order Shall Prevail. And their most recent from a few years ago, self-titled Jungle Rot. So yeah, as I said, really good modern death metal band. Okay, so that is shelf number 2. Now we'll move on to the last part, which is shelf number 3. Okay, so the final part of my death metal collection, we have Morbid Angel, Altars of Madness. I'm sure you're all familiar with these guys and with this album. Classic stuff right there. Then next up we have Blessed Are the Sick, which is another fantastic album. Then we have Covenant. And this is where I kind of lost interest in these guys. Well, not with this album, but after this album. So we have Morbid Angel Domination. Great album, but as I said, kind of lost interest in these guys after this album. Next up we have one of my all-time favourite death metal bands, Obituary, with Slowly We Rot. This album is awesome. Their most well-known or most popular, and for good reason, Cause of Death. This album is absolutely amazing from start to finish. And unfortunately, like Cannibal Corpse, my Obituary collection is a little bit lacking, so I definitely need to work on that, because the only other album that I own from these guys is their self-titled from a few years ago. This album is incredible. I was listening to this for weeks and weeks on end when this first came out. Absolutely phenomenal album right there. And the last lot of albums, or the last band within my death metal collection, is a band that I don't really hear ever get talked about too much. So if you haven't heard of these guys, I definitely highly recommend checking out Revocation. They're a more modern death metal band, and they're one of the bands that I started listening to pretty early on when I was just getting into death metal. So if you are just getting into this genre, definitely check them out because they are pretty thrashy. They're kind of death thrash, I guess. So they're a death metal band, but they've got a really thrashy sound to them. So pretty accessible in my opinion. So this is their album Deathless. And they've released a good lot of albums and they're very, very consistent from album to album. They haven't really released a bad album in my opinion. So the next one we have here from Revocation is Chaos of Forms, which again is really, really good. Next up we have Empire of the Obscene. Self-titled Revocation. Next up we have Great Is Our Sin, and I love the cover on this one, really, really cool. Next up we have Existence is Futile, and another absolutely awesome cover on this one. Another great album as well. And the next one we have here is the most recent one, The Outer Ones. You can't really see the artwork too well because it's really dark and the glare is terrible, so I do apologise. This album's pretty good. It's probably my least favourite, to be honest, out of everything they've put out so far. But again, as I said, these guys are really consistent and this album isn't bad at all. So, yeah. Okay, so that is it. That is my death metal collection, at least as of right now. I'm still relatively new to death metal and I'm still extremely picky when it comes to death metal. There's a lot of death metal bands that I'm just not really into. So yeah, that is pretty much it for my death metal collection. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of these bands in the comments section below. What are some of your favourite death metal bands or albums that I have shown within this video? Let me know. And yeah, that's it for this video, so thanks for watching.